All right. What is going on, everyone? It is Jack, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a kind of raw chat or review, discussion, however you want to phrase it, about the series finale for The Walking Dead. Now, from time to time, I may have it playing in the background, sort of a just bit of something, so it's not just me in the blatant kind of background just chilling. But for the most part, probably just going to be me chilling here. Now, as my very good friend Michonne said, she finds it hilarious when I whip out what she referred to as my customer service voice. And I try to talk as clear as possible because I know, as someone that watches a lot of YouTube, it's a bit of a turn off of sorts to someone's content if I can't really understand the content. So I do my best to speak as clear as possible, and that may entail bringing out the customer service jack on occasion. But we just gonna do this live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. I didn't really have much of a plan going into this. I don't really ever script these. I just kind of want them to be as natural as possible. So I think I'm just gonna kind of chat about it a bit. And I don't think I'm gonna do this series as a whole necessarily. If the chat takes me there, then maybe I will. But as of right now, I kind of want to just talk about the show and its conclusion. Now, I'm not 100% sure with the way that I'm going to structure this, if I am going to keep the initial immediate review that I did with Logan. I did spend a little bit of that explaining some of the questions that he had and things that were going on that he wasn't as up to speed on. So I didn't take as much time to deep dive in to some of the stuff that I was thinking about. And also, it's Sunday, and it's about a week almost on the dot by the hour that the series began its finale. So I've had a fair amount of time to sit on this, and I think of all the shows that I've watched that have come to a close after more than 5 seasons that I've watched, start to finish. I don't want to say live necessarily because that extremely reduces the amount of shows that would fit into that category. So, of the shows that I've watched that have gone on more than 5 seasons and had a definitive end that I've seen all the way through, I think this might be my favorite finale. Don't hold me to that because I've got to kind of think back a bit more and look into it. But overall, I think they did the best with everything that they had. And I don't want that to necessarily diminish the overall outcome and ending. And we'll get into the alternate ending later, but whew, I'm glad we didn't go that route. It's tough because I want to talk about just the episode itself, but I also kind of want to talk about the show leading into its, final arc. So I think I'll go through the episode itself first, and then I'll sort of deep dive into the other things relating to it or leading into it, I suppose. So I will do my best to try to timestamp this. I'm not going to cut it, I don't think, unless something crazy or drastic happens in my room, or I lose power, or something stupid, like I have a sneezing fit or something. I'm going to just keep this as it is, because work's about to get even more crazy than it's been, and I want to make sure I get this up. So, oh boy. And to start it off, we have and this isn't necessarily going to be, a frame by frame breakdown of the entire finale, though I'm going to have the finale probably playing in the background. This opening sequence, well, the panning up, and I mean, some of you know, some of you don't. I did go to school and get a degree in digital media production, so I took my fair share of screenplay classes, script writing, editing, film, production, all of that. And the way that they have paralleled so many earlier scenes from the series is a very, very nice homage that I definitely don't want to go unspoken about or unnoticed. And I'll try to catch as many of them as I can. And if I miss any glaring ones, feel free to let me know in the comments. And I'm going to try to do that less, the pauses and the uhs and the ooh, because I hate when I do that so much. The pan up when they're on the ground reminds me of many scenes in the show where we've had vertical vertical like zoom outs of sorts, and dealing with Rick being shot in the pilot and the tank in the end of the first episode and beginning of the second episode, and when Carl gets shot. And so there's a lot of scenes in the show that have that move that I felt this related to, which was really nice. And the banging on the window, there's another scene that parallels the first season better when they're banging with the rock, so that more so ties into it. But the scenes with the walkers outside the windows of this hospital front, when Judith was seeing them and had to be an absolute badass, mind you, and fend them off and shut the front doors and everything, save Daryl. Awesome. Love that. A little unrealistic, but we'll go with it. It reminded me almost of two things. One, The Well, not Well Walker, season 7, The Well, with Carol, and when she was being brought to the kingdom and she was hallucinating walkers. Just the way it looked made me think it was almost a hallucination at first, and it wasn't. And that was cool. It may have just been the glare when I was watching at the time or something, but it gave me that vibe at first. Because maybe it was because of the way she was like blinking and it was like doing quick fades to black to simulate like her coming in and out of consciousness, but very cool. And it reminded me of Fear a bit with the episode with Grace and the baby. It seemed kind of trippy for a moment, which didn't last, because as we know, we then were hit with our final iteration of the main intro, which, oh my lord, having that recorded with a live studio orchestra, from what I heard, Bear, that was such a good call. Such a good call. Because the extra, burn, like, oh, that shit just hit different, and I loved it. I don't think they've had an intro that has just given me chills the way that one does. And I don't know, I'll get into it more later, but I feel like it's because over the last couple seasons I've felt a little less connected to it than I have in the past. And so in regards to deaths, I definitely thought we were going to get more. And as we're seeing right now, also, Eugene, I definitely want to talk about the arcs that he has had this season, because they have been, the last 3 seasons, Eugene has been one of the best characters. Josh has done a phenomenal job, and I don't want that to go unsaid, because he doesn't really have a social media presence. Not really going to get into it, but those of you that know why, and it's ridiculous, but I really wish that we could have been pouring out the support for him to see personally the last couple seasons, because he more than deserves it. he has completely 180'd that character for a lot of people. Though not everybody. Many more than I thought would be turned around on him. Because when he was first introduced, and there's a couple channels that are catching up, reacting to the show right now, that have just hit the mid-season 5 point or ending season 5, and so they're really starting to get a fair amount of Eugene and how much, of a coward he is and how afraid he is. And the amount of times he was willing to just run, lead in the charge into battle here, especially with this final battle here. He ran straight in with, Negan and Zeke from the start and was, push him back. Like he was going to ride or die to save these people, these family. And that was, I think he's one of my top 5 favorite arcs on the show, without a doubt. And I may make other videos talking about that kind of stuff and going into more detail with top 5, top 10, rating stuff and things of that nature. But as of right now, overall, he had especially this last season. I know a lot of people weren't crazy about the sort of spy thing with the secret agent type shit. And admittedly, it was not my favorite bit from season 11 for sure, but it was better than the Reapers. And that's a whole other thing that we can get into maybe later on in this, is talking about the Reapers. But I did want to talk about the deaths. So I'm going to try to go as chronological as I can with the episode, but the gore, loved it. Absolutely disgusting. And I was pleased with the results we got. I do think that the fact that I was not doing my reaction alone probably had me just subconsciously a little more guarded. So I feel like I may have been a little more affected or emotional with some of the stuff if I'd been doing it like normally, but I'm explaining some of those gut feelings now and everything. I do have to say the black eye that Norman has here is kind of rough. Doesn't look the best. But so the acting in this scene with Nadia and Angel and Lauren and Eleanor was so heartbreaking. And Dan, the visceral nature of the wails and the screams and the sort of, I'm not sure what the best word is for it, but where you're like you're struggling to like catch your breath, but you're like hiccuping / Maggie did something similar to it in 701, and it was very raw and visceral. And I think a lot of the emotion in this episode, which that was another thing, the acting in this episode was very, very well done. It was hitting them too as actors, because they know that they are also saying goodbye to their cast members, most of them. And obviously some of them are still going to do conventions and things of that nature, but a lot of them are saying goodbye to each other for a while. And I think that attributed to some of the emotion, which is definitely good. But with regards to Luke's demise here, he was definitely one of the ones I thought was going to go, as well as Jules. I thought we may lose one more from that group, though, being one of the sisters, or Magna, maybe. I do like that his last breath and effort was talking about bringing music and keeping music alive. So the fact that they brought him back as late as they did, for those fans that weren't diehard following everything, super, super passionate, because there's millions that are more casual viewers, it wasn't going to hit because he was gone for so long, and then they just thrust him back into the story 2-3 episodes ago and were like, now we want you to care about this death. We want you to feel this. And the death itself did not really affect me much. And yes, obviously I was sad to see Luke, Dan go, because I love what he brought to the show and his character. But the reaction from his family, from his friends, was just gets a knot in the stomach, and it hurts. And it was so raw. And I know I've said that it was raw, visceral, all that, and it was. So going forward a bit to some of the blood transfusion thing was a little silly. I'm very glad that they brought Mercer back into the fold as quickly as they did, in true princess fashion, I might add, because without that, I think it would have been a strong disservice to Michael James Shaw and Mercer to not have him be a part of this final fight. And I do feel the Commonwealth side of things and bringing them down was a tad rushed, but it overall got the job done. And I know that they wanted to have a stronger and more drawn out, conclusive wrap for that. But I think with the time that they had and what they were trying to do, I think it worked well. Now, there was almost too much Maggie and Negan stuff this season. I will say that. As much as Negan is one of my favorite characters, there was almost a bit too much of their back and forth. And it was a bit tiresome at times, but this episode, though it was repetitive to some degree, it was probably the best bits of dialogue we've had between those two so far. And I'll touch a little more on that when we get to the wrapping and like their two discussions. I think more so, instead of going from bouncing scene to scene chronological, I will sort of do group scenes. So like this bit here with Rosita rescuing Coco and I believe Ezra and maybe another baby. I don't remember who the other baby was though, in the nursery. Suspending the disbelief that the fact that she fired half or almost a whole clip while in the nursery would absolutely shatter all their eardrums. That aside, the filming for that was amazing. The choreography that Christian did, stupendous. I was trying to think of a good adjective because I'm going to be throwing adjectives around a lot and I want to make sure I'm using good ones. And so their whole trio right now was a very interesting trio and a very fitting one because of who they all are as people. Eugene and Gabe both being cowards that have since come into their own and become very strong characters that have an immense amount of love for their family and are willing to do anything to protect them. And as we see later with the whole ambulance thing and Rosita's scratch on her back, which a lot of people are saying was a bite, I'm pretty sure it was a scratch given the pictures that we've seen from behind the scenes in Christian. And the fact that when you watch it in slow-mo, which I saw many times while editing it, a walker grabs her shoulder and like hoodie and like pulls her down. So she doesn't just let go, she gets pulled off. And I don't see a logic. If they want to say it's a bite, then I don't believe that, because she had 4 layers of clothing on, and for it to bite her on her shoulder blade in that short span of time just doesn't seem plausible or make sense to me. So I'm going to go with a scratch because that seems more logical to me and would make more sense. But that whole scene, they did that well. And I felt so bad watching reactions back for it because so many people thought, oh, she's good. She's fine. She's safe. She's going to be okay. Wow, that was close. You know, that's plot armor. Nope. That is not how that went. And, a lot of people at first were being a bit petty towards Gabe and Eugene about it. More so, I think Gabe, which I kind of get because Rosita was told by Eugene, go, climb up, you first, blah, blah, blah. And she got grabbed on the ankle by Walker. Excuse me. I brought water here for a reason. Eugene told her to go first. She was going to go first. And then she got grabbed in the ankle. And as a result of the ankle grab, it was either all of them wait and potentially all of them die, or they start climbing now and hope for the best. And as we all know, that didn't work out so well for us because she was yanked off. And initially I was going to raise some minor problems with it because she was the only one in the trio that had the baby strapped to her front, which seemed a bit convenient given what happened. But in talking with other people about it, it made sense because not only am I about 99% sure that she was carrying Coco, if she was carrying Coco, which I'm pretty sure she is Coco's mother. In turn, she would want Coco close so she can calm her and coddle her and hold her close and keep her calm. Whereas if she's on her back, that's not really going to work. So I let that one go. That made sense. That was explained away logically, and I get it. The scene after that hurt with that trio. Hurt my soul. Because Eugene had this whole nice speech about the future, and it got me worrying for a second. Was he maybe scratched her bit? And I'm like, nah. The second that she said, well, there's been rumors that she's going to die going around for a long time. And I was hoping they weren't going to be true. But I had a strong feeling they would be. When he first went to talk to Rosita, and she was like, oh, I'm just trying to savor this. And, I'm not trying to let her go. I'm trying to hold her close. That whole demeanor immediately told me that she was dead. And I hated that was going to, I hated it because I knew it was going to hurt, not because it was poorly done. Because just correction, well, not necessarily correction, but further explanation. Christian, who plays Rosita, asked for that. She asked to be killed off, and she wanted to control the way that it happened. And so this was, and it wasn't a case of, Tom Paine with Jesus, where he wanted to be killed off because he did all this work behind the scenes outside the show, training for all this fighting that they never had him do until the end. And he was annoyed, and so he wanted off the show because he wanted to move on to other projects. That's not what it was with Christian at all, from what I understand. She wanted to be killed off. She thought it was exciting. She wanted to have a good send-off for the character, a badass ending, and she did exactly that. She got up from that shit like a video game character in a cutscene, doing, the final stand. I was ready for her to just start swinging her little chainsaw blade around in a circle and just chopping all their heads off like some General Grievous shit from Star Wars. And it didn't work out for Rosita because she was scratched. But all the dialogue, all the heavy hitting stuff for me in this episode came from Eugene and Rosita scenes. And so that last bit there where he starts breaking and getting choked up and saying, I just love you so much. And she's like, I love you. And before that, when I'm right here, and had just tears welling in her eyes. Oh, it was just hitting the soul. And we don't really see them again after that until the dinner scene. So then the next kind of group that we can get into is the Daryl. And this, I think, is going to get into one of my little gripes with the show. The last season and a half or so. Judith not relaying the information about Rick bothered me. And I understand why they did it the way they did it, because as we saw in this finale, her concern that the second she told him he would just leave was warranted, because what happened within a year of her telling him about it, he left. And that was what she was worried about from the start. And she was right to worry, because that's exactly what he did. He left them to go try to find him. And I get it, but I don't really know a better way they could have done it that would have fit the direction they were going with his character. And, I think his spinoff is the one I'm the most concerned about, because I don't know how the hell they're going to set it up or what they're going to do to make it make sense. But I'm holding out hope. I heard that Kang stepped down as showrunner for it too. So I don't know how I feel about that. Might be good, might be bad. Don't really know. But I do wish that he had a bit more of a reaction to Judith sort of mentioning it, even though she mentioned it when she was, under all this medication and stuff and all that. Excuse me. I do wish he reacted a bit more. I know he was probably thinking, oh, she's out of her mind, it makes sense. The whole escaping the hospital reminded me of the first couple seasons as well, and how chaotic things can be. And I'm glad that they didn't shy from having a few extras killed, though they didn't really mean much. It was cool seeing some of the shots that they had for this, because they brought back the variants with the rocks being smashed on the window, and I think with Jules and Luke too, they were properly grabbing and pulling them. So I think that could be attributed to variants too, possibly. But Judith being locked away in that hospital bed and room was very reminiscent to Rick, and being locked in the hospital, and Shane blocking the door in the season 2 flashbacks to what happened. And it does suck that we didn't have anyone alive from the department store in Atlanta to make a callback to when that happened in season 1. Obviously not, oh hey, remember in season 1 when that, but like just seeing a little bit of their facial expression change when they notice what happens, and it would give the inkling that, oh, they remember that because that was something that happened that was very traumatic. And so all of the hand-to-hand fighting in the hospital halls was well done. And they had a really nice one take too when they pulled Judith out of the door. And I'll go to it for a bit right here, where they pull her out of the door, and they bring her around the corner, and then they push up to the corner here, and the camera runs along and then pans back with them. Oh, I really like that. I thought it felt like a VR experience almost. It was really cool. And then we had the continuation following that of the ambulance stuff with Rosita, which again, Eugene busting out the door first, fighting them off here. I love how far Eugene has come. And after all of the ambulance stuff and the Rosita stuff, okay, I thought I had a bloody nose for a second. That would have been bad. That would have been a reason to pause it. So yeah, the whole speech thing here with Mercer and Ezekiel, I get why they rushed it, but it does kind of suck that they rushed it, because they built up this whole thing earlier in the season, about, oh no, it is a bloody nose. Okay, hold on. I will be back. All right, sorry about that. I was trying to do this in one take. I'm back like 25 minutes later. That would not stop bleeding. Okay. I have extra tissue here in case it starts again. Sorry about my dogs. I don't know why they're barking. So, trying to remember where we left off. the Rick stuff. The telling the... Yes, okay. So, Judith. And talking about the fact that her parents were back. Or not back, but that Michonne went looking for Rick. I do wish they handled it a bit better. But I don't know how else they could have. I appreciated the nice callback to Big and Little Ass Kicker, though. Very fitting. So after this, honestly, things cool off quite a bit. And we have the other... Yes, that was the other thing I was going to talk about. The Commonwealth, big motivational speech thing. I'd say that was a bit of a miss in this one. It was still good, but they definitely, I think, could have done it better. Though, again, given the time they had, unless they added an extra half hour for them to, pad a few things and add a little bit more action or something, I don't know what else they could have really done. Mercer and Ezekiel being the ones to step up and stand up initially for the community, I respect. And it fits. It feels right. Aaron keeping the gut coat on, though, seems a little weird. I don't know if that makes sense. The recurring theme of people losing an arm, specifically the the left one, I think. Maybe not exclusively the left one, but there's been a lot of people that have lost limbs. Like 8 or 9 people, I think, or close to that. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on this, so if I'm not, it's not bats in the cave, don't worry. So I know that the whole conversation with Negan and Maggie initially about taking Pamela down, I was ready to roast the shit out of Maggie, because it was really annoying me that she was coming at him again about it. But the way that he handled it, I thought was really well done. He's like, you need to come back from this, whatever we're going to do here. And if you do this, if you take her down, you're not going to come back. Something's going to happen. Either you physically won't come back, or you mentally, emotionally, morally will not come back from this. So he was going to do it. But she elected, no, I'll do it. Be here, as my sidekick kind of thing, whatever. I was like, okay, whatever. A lot of people were pissed that she didn't die. And I understand that. But I don't know how anyone could see it going any other way at this point. Given how strong of a foundation for the morality of Carl. And that's a whole other thing I might get into after this. But there's already a great video on YouTube about it. I think the title goes something along the lines of The Wasted Potential of Carl Grimes or something along those lines. They pretty much share 99% of the same thoughts as me on it, so I don't know if I want to be redundant in remaking the same thing, even though I've talked about that whole situation time and time again in almost every video. But I don't see any other way that this could have gone with Pamela. I don't think it would have made sense, or it would have fit the ending they were going for the show, to kill her. And I think Judith, even though she wasn't initially the one that pushed for Pamela to live, her being the one that nudged it along at the end when she was trying to let herself be eaten by Lance, which was also a very nice callback, I might add. I think it fits her perfectly, and Carl, because she brought Carl up quite a few times. And I do wish they would have gotten to the Alexandria audition tapes in some way. I don't know how, but any way they could have explained it away, I would have been fine with. I really wanted her to see those. And I think it's a miss that they didn't take the chance to do that. Like, hell, in season 9, in the finale, when they were, making a stop at the sanctuary, there could have been some dusty box sitting in the corner with the camera and the old tapes, and they could have just brought them back as, like, mementos, even though they might not have had the ability to play them. Like, it could have been something that simple. And because I remember the Saviors were looking at them, I don't know if they took all of them, but I don't think they would have just destroyed the tapes, because that could have been useful. So that aside, there was, even though I haven't been the biggest fan of Gabe, and I thought it would have been a very fitting end for him to go out during the Whisper War, similar to his comic counterpart, I like where they wrap things with him. And I do again wish there was a little more death, but saving it all for the finale of the series doesn't feel right. It feels like if they were going to put it off this long, you can't just then throw 10 in right at once for us. It just would feel like they were trying to shock us, and they were trying to excuse me, irritate us or something along those lines. So I'm glad that they didn't necessarily just off everybody, though it would have been nice to have more deaths. I do think if they were going to do it, they should have spaced it out better this season, and they didn't. And that's a whole other discussion for the way that they kind of forced their hand in wrapping in 12, even though they weren't planning on it. From what I remember and what I've read in articles online, they were planning on going 13 to 15, which I could have very easily seen them doing and have Rick and Michonne back for the final season or two. But AMC wasn't having it, and it just didn't work out that way. But other than that, the rap for Gabriel and the full circle that he had in the end of this scene here with Pamela and the gate, and going back to his initial entrance to the show and his backstory that we received, which entailed him being asleep in the church when everything was hitting the fan and waking up to hearing people screaming outside, and then the walkers coming very shortly after and ripping entire families, women, men, children, old people in his congregation to pieces just along the border of his church, while he sat inside just terrified, to then now walkers pouring in to the people by the gate, the 50,000 people. That's another issue that I have with the season, is that we really never got a proper sense of good scale for what they claim to have. I don't know what else they really could have done for it, though. But Gabriel going and letting them in, letting the people in, I think was also a very fitting full circle for his character. And I don't know if there's another way that I could have seen him going, at least in this episode. You know, I thought that they could have picked some people up, but like I said, it would have felt like they were trying too hard. And what else was good with it? The F-bombs that were dropped. Loved that. And I might do a compilation of all the F-bombs in the show, or tallies or something. I did do a tally on Twitter, and I might try to retweet it shortly after this video goes live, or I may do another video talking about it or something. But this is going to be probably as raw of an upload as I can do, because I just want to get it up, and rendering it's going to take 2-3 hours, so I don't want to do that. I just want to upload this as it is to YouTube and just run with it. And so again, after this was sort of the falling action for the episode. Stuff started to sort of slow down a bit, even though we had the whole music montage, the CM Punk stuff, which I know a lot of people felt it could have been dragged out a bit. I did like the way that they did it. We all knew what they needed to do for the most part. We all knew that we didn't need a whole episode explaining the plans for it and laying out the, they did a montage, a music montage of it, laid it down, showed us what needed to be done, and did it. And that was it. And I did like, they may not have been trying to make it a parallel, but having Eugene assisting in rigging the explosives, learning from Rosita, who has been a demolition expert in the past, as we know, was a nice callback as well. The fact that they blew up the entirety of the estates symbolically, love that as well. Some people were complaining about how it looked. I personally, yes, it wasn't perfect, but it's basic cable. Okay? There's not much better that we're going to get on basic cable. I believe that it looked far superior to the No Sanctuary explosions, without question. Going back and watching those now, they look so bad. And there's a lot of stuff about No Sanctuary that I think is overhyped, and I might, who knows, make a video talking about that. But I also appreciated the callbacks to the radio call signs, Blue Weevil, all that. But I've said but like 7,500 times. I'm trying to think I don't know if there was anything else with this other than the fact of the symbolism of them blowing up the estate and basically, destroying, eating the rich. They blew up Pamela's home too, which was lovely because fuck her. So, the explosion happens, tears down the sewers and the estates and all that nice shit. And then we see Pamela locked away. We get some pretty funny dialogue from Carol, talking about how the ugly decision of keeping her alive won't really weigh on them that much. And they don't have to worry about who gets her house, because it's ashes and rubble. Fucking great. Then we have one of those conversations with Maggie and Negan. And I sort of touched on that a bit earlier, that I think it probably took a long time to write it this way and this well, but King did a good job. Though I have my stance with things, and I know that I'm not going to, again, harp on it a bunch. I ranted about it in one of the reactions, but no, the methods for everything weren't all super moral with Negan's group. I definitely think that the main group did not go about handling that situation in the right way. And I think that both groups did awful things that I think to move forward in life, they both need to acknowledge that and stop trying to just pit everything against each other and just try to pull together and work together. Because in the end, that is what both groups were trying to do in their own way, and neither group was doing it perfect. And no group will do it perfectly. You have to learn from your mistakes, and both groups have made immense mistakes, and it has cost them so much. So having them come full circle with this talk, and her basically explaining the mindset that we all know she's had, and just verbalizing it, because we all know that she's felt this way for the longest time, and it's not news to us. Like, we know that she felt this way, and they were, tiptoeing around it for a while this season, and that was what was annoying me, that they weren't just coming out, saying it, ripping the Band-Aid off, dealing with it. Like, she's been gone longer. She was gone for like 6 years, and then came back, and he has done all this good and helped out all these people when there were no other options, and then expects she's trapped in the past, essentially. And I'm not saying that she has to forget stuff, because no one's going to forget it, and she doesn't have to forgive him either. But she also can't force other people to feel a certain way about him when he's done all the things that he's done to help them out. And I think that was the issue, that there was some sort of disconnect there that just wasn't really sitting well with me. And I'm glad that they've moved past it, though it seems by some of the promo we've seen for Dead City, they haven't fully moved past it. So I don't know how they're going to set that up, but I hope it's done well. And in talking with a few other reactors and creators, I have a sneaking suspicion that they will not be traveling to New York together. They will end up meeting there somehow under odd circumstances, and that will cause a rift of some sort. But how that happens, we may never know. The dinner scene, very reminiscent of the extended 701 scene with the very nice dinner and the slow-mo and the sad music and all that shit, and Eugene just having all these awfully sad glances at Rosita just broke my heart. We finally see Dog back. I don't know what the deal was with not having him in the season much. It was a bit annoying. They only toast to Luke. That bothered me a tiny bit. They did lose a fair amount of people, though Luke was recent. And I appreciated the sort of nod that I think the nod that Daryl had to Negan meant a lot more than people thought. He looked out the window, Negan looked back up at him, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, kind of situation. And Daryl's just kind of like, you're good. And that's it. I think that he's good now. And based on the epilogue that we received, it seems as though he just leaves, which maybe we'll get some explanation of that in Dead City. I appreciated that they brought Magna and Yumiko back together, because that seemed like a really annoying breakup, though it did fit because they were totally in opposite parts or like mindsets at the time. Having Rosita slink away from everybody and start, getting the hot flashes with the infection starting to kind of take hold. And I know a lot of people, I think I was starting to say this, a lot of people were complaining that she was still around because, people turn so fast. And Carl took like a day and a half to turn or to die. Jim took almost 2 days. And I think it's different when the bite itself kills you versus the infection. And I know that doesn't necessarily make sense, but say like when people are bit, on the jugular or bit like on a place that has an artery and they bleed out or they're ripped to pieces, that's different because I think the infection reanimates the brain after it's dead. So it can't reanimate you if you're not dead yet. So if your body's fighting the infection and just slowly losing to it, it's going to be different. And Judith's realization here of what happened to Rosita without having to hear any of the words said broke my heart, because good Lord, Kaylee has come into her own with her acting these last 2.5, 3 seasons. I was blown away by the casting. I really didn't think that I was going to have a super strong connection to her after losing Carl, and it's not even remotely close to the connection that I had with Carl, because I grew up with Carl. I started watching the show when I was 13 or 14. I grew up alongside him, and so losing him hurt a lot for many reasons. And I can't really relate to Judith that much. And I related to Henry, kind of, sort of, and Benjamin a bit. But taking out Carl and like leaving Judith as the legacy, I get, because it, and I was worried about the casting, and because they needed someone to slam into that role fast and just kill it. And that's exactly what she did. As silly as some of the stuff with her early on was, with the whole having Rick's gun and the recoil, all that bullshit, it was easy to look past. And I'm glad that they cast her, because she's done a phenomenal job. And I cannot wait to see what other acting she does over the years, because I think she's got a massive career ahead of her if she chooses to go that route. Now, when the tears almost were flowing when I was watching, when I started editing, they started coming, and I feel like they're starting to come now, so I will try to hold them back. This goodbye with Rosita was gut-wrenching. It hurt so bad. Just the slow prayer with Seth's voice breaking and her saying goodbye to Coco, and just like her just having a tear here, a tear that just, it just, and like I said, I liked the goodbyes. They weren't drawn out. They knew what they were trying to say, and she probably did, tell them, and that would be something that would have been nice to see her kind of letting everybody know, and then seeing how everyone felt about it and reacted to it. But they've never really been great with bite reveals, to be fair, and death reveals like that, because they did a horrible job with Carl's. There should have been a much better expressed reaction to that, and there wasn't, and it still bugs me to this day. But when Eugene came in to say goodbye, oh, editing Jack, it was all over after that, and it might be over again. We'll see. I'm holding them back, but they're fighting. They're fighting to come out right now. But for some reason, when these two are on screen together, just it's such an unexpected pairing and friendship and love that has grown through very high ups and low downs. And the fact that his last words to her are, I wouldn't be the man I am today if I had not met you. And all she has to say back is, I'm glad it was you in the end. Take that however you want to take it. That shit was one of the saddest fucking scenes in the whole show. And just the slow, just her slow eye close and everything. Oh, and Eugene and Josh's acting too. Other than putting aside the character's arc being phenomenal the last couple seasons, Josh's acting has been amazing. And I don't think he's been in any massive, major mainstream productions of any kind before this. Now, I certainly don't believe this is his first acting gig, but the fact that he hasn't done anything massive and major before this and did an incredible job with this, just hats off to Josh for that. We then wrap the first act or two of the finale and head to the epilogue 1 year later. And we see Eugene paying respects to Rosita and the rest with the speech from Zeke and Mercer in the background. And we get the reveal that Eugene is in fact a daddy. He's been laying it down. And he named his baby Rosie. Shit hurts. So it was like, hey, you know that open wound you got, those emotional damages you got right now? Here's some salt to sprinkle in the wound. It's like, did you have to do that? No, but they did, and I love the pain. Thank you. I've read in a few places that Kari was very unhappy with the way that Ezekiel wound up. I would be interested to talk to him and learn where he would have liked him to go instead. Maybe he was just unhappy with him taking the leadership role. I'm not sure, but he seems like a good person for it. Then again, most of the best people for leadership positions are not those that want them. And having Mercer as his, second in command, I had a lot of respect for. Don't even get me started on the teasing and the wasted potential of Donnie. I am just going to go ahead and say that they're together in this future world because not a single character in the show has made Daryl or Norman have those those cute ass giggles out of nowhere. And the way that he looks at her and the way that she looks at him and caring about each other's happiness and feelings and all of the happy and giggles and everything, just, they're together, all right? They're fucking together. Judith getting the compass from Negan was a nice little touch and sort of teased to be like, hey, Negan ain't here right now. We aren't going to tell you where he is, but he's not here. I'm assuming possibly either Alexandria or New York. The explanation for giving the compass back, I understand. It made sense. I respect it. Seeing Lydia, come say hey, and her still being with Elijah, it's nice. I appreciate it. I love it. And I know I'm not necessarily listening to it right now because I didn't want to distract myself from it, but from the review. The score in this episode may be one of the best that the show's ever had, which I can't speak highly enough about Bear McCreary. It's just blown me away. And when we hop to Alexandria and we get everyone, reuniting again and don't get some of the OGs from Alexandria, like Scott and Barbara, and some of the, the Hilltop OGs, like Cal and Eduardo, that we haven't seen in a while. Birdie, also from Hilltop. That did bother me a bit, and I don't know if I'm going to include the bit from me and Logan before this or not. I might, because this is getting a bit long. It's almost an hour now, and I'm sure most of you are probably skipping around through this. But if you're not, and you have stuck through all the way, thank you. And since Father Gabe was just on screen, put Carl's bullseye in the comments, because we just also hit the scene where Chandler was an extra in the background, apparently. And I saw it upon editing, did not see it upon first watch. They didn't want to make it so you could see it on first watch, which makes sense. Whoops, hold on. There we go. The rap between, I'm going to say Norman and Melissa, felt more like a scene between Norman and Melissa on Ride than it did Daryl and Carol, if that makes sense. This did not feel like Carol and Daryl. It felt like Norman and Melissa were saying their goodbyes, which it took me out of it a little bit, but not entirely in a bad way, because I know how close those two are in real life. I'd say I know, like, I'm personally friends with them and have a group chat. No, I've interviews, panels, conventions over the years. You can see their friendship. They're very close. And I know that the decision to step away from that spinoff must have been hard for Melissa for a number of reasons, or maybe not, but it seems like it was. So I think they had to reshoot this bit here, probably because she initially was going to go on that spinoff, but didn't. So that could be a discussion for another day, the whole spinoff chit-chat. I think since I discussed the spinoff stuff a fair bit in the beginning of this, if I include that bit there with Logan, I talked about the spinoffs a decent amount. And I may talk about them again at the end here, because a lot of people got kind of mad because I said I was initially kind of confused with the extra scenes with Rick and Michonne, which we're going to get to momentarily. But I might just briefly touch on them a little bit. I don't want to speculate a ton unless you guys want me to. Then I will. I will gladly speculate to the moon for this stuff. But again, the whole thing with Judith and Daryl, and her not wanting to tell him about Rick and Michonne because she thought he would leave, he does exactly that right here. And as annoying as that is, it's fitting, because we saw how long he was away in the woods with Leah, on and off looking for Rick. Well, looking for Rick every day first, and then he was with Leah for almost a year and a half, I think, maybe longer, and still was thinking about Rick every day. So him throwing on the poncho as well gave season 3 vibes, which was cool. And having him, ride off into the sunset, having it be, one of the final bits with him, I thought was fitting. It was nice. And the fact that we have such a colorful foreground with the purple flowers and everything, it was nice. And then we get one of the last walkers we see in this timeline, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Greg Nicotero. You love to see it. I think they CGI'd some of the trees here because they don't look very good. And I'm willing to look past that given what they spent the budget on. Aside from this, not going to complain about that too much. Now, seeing all the flashes with everybody after the match lit, and them talking about I actually transcribed some of this in a note, and I want to make sure that I talk about some of it. So I didn't catch all of it when I was first writing it down, or not first writing it down, but when I was writing it down. But so Rick's quote or bit here is, "I think of the dead all the time and about the living, who I lost. I think about them all every day. Their faces, what I learned from them, how they made me who I am. So much more. then all of this made me who I am. All of our lives, they come in one life. We're together, pieces of a whole that just keep going for what we gave each other. One unstoppable life. You showed me that. You gave me that. And he has a bit after that I didn't type down, but then Michonne says, I tried to get to you and your brother again and again. It's too far for the radio now. I know that. But I still got you, and you've got me. We're connected. We're still connected. To everybody we ever loved, we'll always be together, even when we're apart. We together are the strongest thing. We're love. And love is endless. So we, those gone, those away, we are endless. And they have a little bit extra at the end. Each of them that I didn't type down, but seeing everyone flash on the screen, just, and those bright blue eyes like my own, just, it was hype. It was hitting. It was good. And for people that were pissed that they didn't come back and, in a blaze of glory and save everybody, while from a fanfic perspective that would have been super cool, narratively that would have made no sense and would have screwed them completely with the spinoffs. The spinoffs are to tell the journey of how they get back together and then eventually find everybody. Michonne's fit in this timeline was fire. No doubt. Definitely on some Wakanda shit. I'm interested to see what group it's like a pilgrimage type group that she, gets in contact with, and then seeing Rick with Silas's cull facility jacket on was very interesting and leaves a lot of questions unanswered. But the fact that he puts all the stuff in the bag or the backpack and then tosses it onto the boat, it all clicked when I was editing it. Don't worry that, he tossed it on the boat. Michonne found the stuff on the boat after it drifted to New Jersey, to where the island that Virgil was by. Which that's another thing. We didn't see Virgil again, which was kind of weird. So maybe they intended for that and wanted him to just kind of disappear. I don't know. We never found that bottle, though. So maybe we'll find that bottle at some point somewhere. Rick running around barefoot here seems so nasty. And just vile. But him having the last Walker kill on the show feels very justified. And it fits. And then their final quote to him, calling him Consignee Grimes, and telling him that he needs to, they say, come on, Rick, it's like he told you. There's no escape for the living. And they play it off as though Michonne is seeing Rick, but then they cut to her riding the horse with her Michonne out, with her katana out, ready to just take on a whole horde, unless that's the new group she's settled with. I also appreciate the little compilation at the end with "We're the Ones Who Live," because a lot of people weren't sure what the quote was that Michonne had to Rick, and that came very easily to me because of season 7. So that's one of the few things I feel like I got before a lot of people that I was happy about, that I got that earlier this season because it was mentioned a few times. But maybe we can do some analyses of the background further on this or something, but we know that Rick is outside Philadelphia right now, I believe, which, cool. Now, I wonder, when he smiles here, is it because he knows the driver? Or is it a smile to the fans? Or a smile because he has something planned? We'll have to find out later. But Judith ending everything here with the quote from Michonne felt very fitting. And then the thank you to the fans by the cast and their Zoom call footage and everything, warmed my heart. This show has meant so much to millions of people, and the cast has put their blood, sweat, and tears into this show for so long. And this final season especially was a grind. There were so many onset injuries, whether from the show or from auxiliary things. JDM had, busted up feet, and I know Norman had a concussion for a bit. Like, there was a lot of stuff going on that could have caused them to delay this, and they didn't. So, again, hats off to you guys for fighting through this. The most recent season of Fear was very rough. Hard to get through. 8, though, seems much more interesting because Fear is currently around the same time where Rick was taken, timeline-wise, which excites me because it means that they could tie things together with Rick, possibly. I doubt it, but you never know. Now, seeing Maggie and Negan, their fits in Dead City are so good. I don't know how they're going to come together, but they are. And okay, so yeah, now we're getting to the Zoom calls with all the cast and everything, but I don't know how much else I have to sort of discuss or talk about. I don't think I'm gonna. I kind of want to just upload this, so I don't think I'm gonna put the thing with me and Logan at the beginning of this. We did talk for a fair bit, but about half of it was me explaining some of the spin-off stuff and how some of the things that he was a little confused on happened. The main thing that I talked about it in there that I didn't really touch on in here was how I thought the spin-offs were going to come to be, which, I mean, I still feel pretty much the same way about. I think the Norman thing, he's supposed to end up in France against his own will. We really have no information on that. Dead City, I think now, after talking to some people, that it would make more sense for both of them to split and end up there and meet up randomly, though it does seem a bit far-fetched. I don't think they would ever travel there together. We don't know what happens to Annie. We don't know what happens to Herschel. It seems odd that they would just leave them, though. So I don't really know what their plan is with that. This got me much more excited about the Michonne spinoff, though, for sure. The Michonne spinoff, I'm the most excited for as of right now. Then probably Dead City, and then the Dixon one. And it's not just because Daryl isn't one of my favorites, but it's because they really haven't given us much to go off of, and I'm worried about how they're going to make it work, or make it make sense. Though I am very interested to see the world building that they're going to do here, because AMC has found their thing. This is what they can build on. This is what will keep them relevant. Whether people want to hate on the new show or not, do what you want. The main show's over. People can stop being like, oh, that show's still on. I didn't know that. Wow, it got bad like 5 years ago. Like, shut the fuck up. Your opinions are invalid. You didn't watch past like season 4 or 5 because you have the attention span of a goldfish. Okay, sit down, buddy, and stick to your Tumblr reviews for shit. You guys are fucking stupid on that shit. Stop. The show is one of the most successful and well-known basic cable programming of all time. It is a cultural phenomenon, and it always will be. No one's gonna ever forget about this because it's gonna keep expanding. Now, as long as they don't go the route of the MCU and kind of DC now and make it insanely oversaturated and go back on all of the original heart, soul, and value of the show, I think they'll be fine. Because they can't expand anymore on Breaking Bad, I don't think. They did a spinoff for it, I think, Better Call Saul. I haven't watched it. I was never a big fan of Saul as a character in the main show, so I didn't bother watching it. But that's all they're doing for Breaking Bad, from what I assume. That was their main other, like, big show. I wasn't really familiar with them as a network until Breaking Bad and Walking Dead came around, though. And with Walking Dead being as big as it is right now, and still having the potential to grow in the future and expand exponentially, I don't think they're in any position or desire to let it go anytime soon. So they are going to do everything they can to keep this universe being built and keep it relevant. And if that means ushering in new generational type talent and stories, I'm fine with that as long as it's done well. Ergo, not like the first season of Tales, because the first season of Tales was painful. And I thought they were going to bring in some old characters for their origin stories for that, and a lot of people were excited about that, but they didn't do that. The only person they brought in for that was Alpha, which, though it gave some interesting insight, she was already gone. And though a lot of the other people they were considering doing were gone, I think a lot of people would still be interested to see, the formation of the Saviors, Negan and Dwight and Simon taking down the original dictator and then reforming it, and with Laura. And I would be totally down to see the formation of the kingdom with Ezekiel arriving with Shiva and helping, build it up with Ezekiel. And, even I might even be interested in seeing the Woodbury stuff if David Morrissey wanted to come back. Or, the governor from Phantom Spotlight. Whoever needs to come back to do it, they can do it. And Tyrese and Sasha, also the main one that I've been dying to see. Abe, Eugene, and Rosita and their crew. I have been wanting to see that for years, and I hope that they can do it. I'm strong doubts that they will, but you never know. They might surprise us. Now, I don't want this to drag on too long because it's very long already. This is already shaping up to be one of my longest videos that is not a live stream, so I probably will wrap it here soon. Though, if you guys are interested in me doing more deep dives on Walking Dead as a whole, doing, tier lists, rankings for stuff, let me know. Work is very busy right now with the holidays, and within the last month, I've put in over 180 hours at work. So, forgive me if I don't have videos pumping out like crazy. That's why. I'm going to do my best to get some out. And I don't want The Walking Dead to just die, because it's my favorite show. And I think that it would be a disservice for me to not cover it and not give it the respect and attention it deserves, because it's amazing. And it is a crime that they have not gotten more nominations and awards for different things in the show. The acting alone should have gotten at least a dozen awards by this point, but they just keep snuffing them because it's a horror show, and it just bugs the shit out of me. That being said, I do think the 8th season of Fear could turn things around, depending on how they do it. I'm cautiously optimistic. It can't get much worse than season 5 and season 7, though, so we'll see. I will have to double check on the time of the spin-offs releases. You don't have to comment it. Don't worry. I'm going to look it up the second I finish filming. But I believe Fear and Dead City are coming out first. Then I believe the Dixon spin-off is coming over the summer. And the second half of Fear is coming towards the end of summer. And then we're getting the Michonne spin-off in the fall. I believe that's what it is. I'll double check after this. Don't worry. I don't think I have a ton else, because I could talk about this for 10 hours and talk about all the things that were amazing throughout the show, all the, misses that they've had, all the bad decisions, all the good decisions, whatever. But there's not a lot of shows that can keep quality as long as this show has. And as much as people hate on season 7 and 8, I think the main reason is because people were exceptionally butthurt about Glenn, which I get. I get it. Trust me, he was a top, 5 or 6 for me, for sure. But I also was just eternally entertained by JDM and Negan. So it compensated for it. And Abe, too, because Abe and Glenn were top for me. Or close to the top. And Negan came in and just fucked that up for so many people. But that premiere was massive. And I think if they didn't do the cliffhanger in season 6, it would not have pissed people off nearly as much as it did. Yes, the writing in 7 and 8 were not the best. And the decision to kill Carl, I believe, is what really drove the downfall and the poor decision writing with Gimple, and I'm glad that he was removed. Though a decent amount of the damage was already done, and Tom Payne wanting off, Andy wanting off, Denai wanting off, it was all a catalyst after Chandler. I'm pretty strongly believing in that. But like I said, as much as people have their gripes with season 7 and 8, I wouldn't consider them bad. Because of the high quality that the show set with the first 6 seasons, having seasons be, they're all right, makes people feel like they're insanely low drops in quality, or strong drops in quality, big drops in quality. But they really weren't. If you binge 7 and 8, they're not that bad. And I think that's why most of the people I've seen that are binging through them don't have a big issue with it, because it was a week-to-week slow grind of our heroes being at the bottom, and people were very uncomfortable with that. And I think The Walking Dead had a lot of balls for doing it, and it did hurt. But also, we got AMC Plus and streaming services and all the early releases and pirating. So a lot of people talking numbers and shit don't really know what they're talking about. Because again, I took, the digital marketing classes. I know how much that shit can be affected by pirating and by streaming services and all that shit, and on demand, and not like a lot of that was live watching. But once people started getting on demand and started pirating and started getting AMC Plus, that really made people think that the numbers were a lot worse than they were. They weren't really. Yes, there were drops, I'm sure, but it was not nearly as bad as people thought that it was. I do wonder oftentimes how different things would have been if they would have stuck to even one or two of the major comic decisions, such as keeping Sophia around, or keeping Carl around, or Andrea, or Rick. I'm glad that I think the Commonwealth arc in the show was better than the comic one, because the comic one felt very rushed. They killed Rick, and it just was awful. After it just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and it was very, I want to end things, okay, and then just ended it, and it never really sat right with me. And that's kind of how it was with this too, a bit, that they were planning on and were writing for an additional 3 or 4 seasons after this. And I imagine they would have brought Rick and Michonne back. But the Reaper arc, I think, was supposed to be a full season, full fleshed out villain arc. And I think it could have been amazing. The buildup was great. It was horrifying. Their theme was just amazing. And it just flopped so hard. And it sucks, because that then forced the Commonwealth stuff to be crunched. So, all in all, I love The Walking Dead. I always will love The Walking Dead. Though it has hurt me time and time again, I will learn to live with the pain. As Andrea once said, the pain doesn't go away. You just make room for it. I'd be interested to see what everyone's extended and detailed thoughts were on the finale as a whole. And please let me know if you guys want to see more videos kind of deep diving on stuff for The Walking Dead, whether it be tier lists, ranking videos, anything like that. I can try to do stuff like that. And remember, this isn't going to be one of those videos, but if you want the full uncut and early reactions or videos for everything I watch, some stuff is exclusive on there at the moment, like Fear the Walking Dead Season 7 and Atypical. Atypical will be coming out on here eventually, and Invincible. I just gotta find the time to edit them all. I'm hopefully going to dive into movies soon. Not sure when, but we'll see. Those are big editing endeavor. I will be finishing editing House of the Dragon and Stranger Things soon as well, hopefully. They are finished and they are up on there, and they have been for a few months, so if you want to check those out too, full uncut in their entirety. Stranger Things broke my girlfriend, and it broke my heart. So if you want to see that, check out Patreon down below. If you can't, no worries. Thank you all for 3,000 subscribers. Never thought we'd get there, but we did. And as always, hope you all enjoyed. And this has been Jack. And I'm out. Peace.